Hey guys, welcome into Sports Around the Bar, your weekly sports talk show. I'm your bartender, Jake Reaper, and tonight I'm joined left stool here up front. We have Drew. Drew, man, what's going on?
Man, I'm excited to get into what we're going to talk about today. You know, we've got a lot on the board, and we're going to get into it.
And on my right over here, we have Dwayne. Dwayne, thanks for joining us, man.
Thank you, man. Good to be here.
All right, guys, with that, let's start with what's on tap. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit of NFL free agency. You know, we've had some movement here. Why don't we take a second, pop our tops? And, we had NFL free agency with some pretty surprise guys coming out there. We'll start with that, and then we'll move into some retirements. And then on to the meat of the program. We're going to be talking mainly tonight about our AFC and NFC divisional standings, who we think are the best in each division for next season coming up. Now, this is pre-draft, so it'll be interesting to see how that changes. So go ahead and stay tuned with us, and we'll get into that. Yeah. So with that, let's pregame with some NFL free agency. You know, as everybody knows, Dez Bryant is now recently a free agent. And, guys, first impressions, what do you think about the Cowboys not bringing Dez back? Pretty crazy, right?
Oh, it's insane. I mean, you're talking about if he wasn't the number one receiver, he was a decoy in that offense. You know, he blew the top off. Yeah, he's not as fast as he used to be, but he still got the hops. He still has the hands. But, you know, maybe they're going to replace him in the draft. Maybe that's what they're looking for, you know. It'll be interesting to see what they do.
Dez Bryant was never a burner in his career. He was always a high-point-the-ball receiver, and I don't think he can go to a team that has no starting quarterback.
What I find amazing about it is him being released this late in the season. I mean, you don't see high-profile receivers being released, you know, right before the draft. Usually it's right before the league year, right as it opens. So to see him move out this late, I mean, I think you're going to see a team open the wallet, and it's going to get crazy.
I don't think a team's going to do that. Now, I think a team is focused on their draft board right now and looking at the receivers in the draft and think about what receiver they're targeting in the draft.
In normal circumstances, sure, but I mean, Dez was a top 10 receiver not too long ago. I mean, I know he had a down year, but the Cowboys kind of shifted their offense. They had Zeke out. I mean, I still think he's got that kind of potential, and I bet you there's some GMs that do too. So when you say that, I mean, I agree, but if you sit there and wait, I mean, you could miss out on him.
You got to think about the teams that have no cap room. The teams that he wants to go to an NFC East team because he wants to play the Cowboys. He said he wants revenge on the Cowboys, and them teams don't have cap room to sign him.
I think he's going to find a smaller market than what you actually think he's going to find out there. He's not going to get anywhere near the money he was getting at the Cowboys. I think they offered him the most. I literally, in my opinion, his best luck for the most money probably be the Ravens, considering they've already reached out to him. They're talking about making space for him. If he tries to go anywhere else, he's going to take a lot less money. And if that's why he left the Cowboys, because he wasn't willing to restructure that contract, I just don't see that happening.
It'll be interesting for sure. I mean, I get the revenge aspect. I get the money aspect. I just think he's going to go money side because revenge is great and all, but, you know, when you see those dollar signs on the check, that's where I think it winds up. And I don't fault him for it, and especially in the NFL where nothing's guaranteed and you only have so long to make money. If this is your last chance to make a big contract, you got to take it, right?
You got to think about the teams that have the money to pay him. The teams that have the money to pay him don't have a legitimate starting quarterback. Only team is the Ravens. And
how legitimate are we talking about?
What other team can he go to and have a legitimate starting quarterback?
Well, that's the question. I mean, who can clear the cap space? Maybe you see somebody like Seattle cut somebody and make room for him because I think he'd be pretty scary in Seattle out that way, playing with Russell Wilson.
And I think that brings us into our next cut with C.J. Anderson being cut by the Broncos. I honestly see that cut being a cut to clear up cap space. I mean, he was our number one running back last year. Yeah, he wasn't that great, but was it him or was it his offensive line?
I mean, he just wasn't getting the carries. I had him on my fantasy team. There were weeks he was getting 6 and 8 carries. Believe me, that hurt. Nobody was hurt more than that than me. You know, I was torn up about that.
You got to think about how the offense was. They had no starting quarterback all year. They had all these backups in, and they stacked the box. They stacked the box every game.
Well, don't tell Elway that. He thought he had his guy.
No. Trevor Siemian was not his guy. Brock was not the guy.
We got our guy.
We got him.
Tim Tebow. We got him.
Well, you know what, though? Whoever picks up C.J. Anderson is going to have hopefully a good 1-2 punch. I don't really see him going and being a leading role anywhere. I think the Broncos were it if he was going to be a leading role running back, in my opinion. Wherever he goes, he's definitely going to be taking third down, fourth down, plays. That's where I see him going.
Unlike Dez, I definitely think he's going to be a guy that you see move after the draft, and it'll be a team that thought they were going to hit a home run at running back, and then they were like, well, we didn't get our guy, so let's go get C.J. Anderson. I still think he's got a lot in the tank. I think he could be a leading role guy, especially if he goes somewhere like Indianapolis. But I just don't see a team opening the wallet for a guy like C.J. Anderson right now when there's so many running backs in this draft.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. I think the running backs are too deep in this draft to... If they do pick up C.J. Anderson, I think a rookie's still going to probably start in Indianapolis is what I'm talking about.
You got to think about the teams that want to see C.J. Anderson. It's like teams like that want like a backup running back that can split carries with their starter.
Yeah, I mean, I think he can carry the load. I think he's a great running back, and I think back to 2 or 3 years ago where he had his breakout season. I mean, I think we can still see that again from him, especially I just don't think he's utilized right by Denver. Like I said, they were trying to give him 6 carries, and then they were trying to give Booker 6 carries, and then Jamal Charles 6 carries, and it's like nobody was getting any kind of rhythm behind a bad offensive line to begin with no quarterback. So, there just wasn't a whole lot of options for him. I think he'll move on to, have a better career somewhere else. I think this is probably the best move for him.
I wonder what he say in the AFC West. That's because I wonder if he has like the revenge factor of getting released and trying to go to a team in the AFC West and trying to play them twice a year.
He's going to get stuck in a backup role, so I guess that's up to him and his ego. Can he take a backup role?
You got to think about the Raiders. They have Marshawn Lynch, and they can bring him in to be split carries and Marshawn Lynch. And you got the Chargers who can split carries and Melvin Gordon. And you have the Chiefs, but I don't think the Chiefs will pick him up because they have 2 legitimate running backs, and Kendrick West and Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, I think if it's anyone in the West, it's probably Oakland. Maybe the Chargers bring him in as the second guy, but if he's going to get the start, he's going to have to beat out Marshawn Lynch in the West. Other than that, we can push on. We've had some NFL retirements here this week, too. Dwayne, which one was most surprising to you?
James Harrison retirement, because you thought that man could go just keep playing, 39 years old, but how he trains...
42.
He's 39 years old.
Is it really?
Yeah, 39 years old.
I was 40.
Just keeps just out there, just lifting weights, just doing unordinary stuff.
Oh, he's a freak, man. He's just a freak.
He's still releasing workout videos of his extreme workout videos. That when he said he was retiring, that next day he put another workout video out. So it was pretty crazy to see this man. I mean, he's just a beast. I just don't know if I see him.
He wanted to retire for his sons because he was not there for them.
I can understand that, and there comes a point in time where you're just like, the physical toll of the NFL has to catch up to you eventually. 39 years at linebacker. I mean, sometimes you see a kicker make it 40 years, and every so often a quarterback. But to make it there at outside linebacker like that, a pass rusher, that's insane. You just don't see that anymore.
A kicker, you're not really doing anything.
Exactly. A kicker, you're barely a field goal, or you're barely an NFL player as it is, right?
You don't even get touched.
Don't tell Pat McAfee that, because he will definitely not be.
He's a punter.
He's
totally different. He's a punter.
He's just punting the ball. He's Adam Vinatieri. Adam Vinatieri is, how old is he, 44, 45?
Yeah, he's up there. You've had a couple others. I think Janikowski's 39 or 40, so it can be done at the kicker position. You just don't see too many outside linebackers.
Yeah, no, I'm surprised he played that long.
Also notable retirements. We had Nick Mangold retire. What was a couple of the others you saw?
Paul Plusnowski, Jacksonville Jaguars linebacker. He retired.
We kind of saw that coming. I mean, that man has taken hit in the middle so many times. I mean,
true, but he's 34 or 35. I mean, imagine that plus 5 and still playing. I mean, whew.
But he plays a different position than James Harrison does.
And he plays for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they just finally had a winning season. He's been playing with the Jaguars team that was 3 wins, 4 wins, and he was tired of losing.
And before that, he was in Buffalo, so it's not like he came from a winning culture there.
And I want to say, was it last year? Was the first year he didn't lead the team in tackling? I mean,
yeah,
the man is just a bruiser.
He probably just wanted to make the playoffs, to be honest. I mean, Buffalo hadn't made it in years when he was there, and Jacksonville is the first time they'd been back since he came to town. So I'm sure the guy was just ecstatic to actually have a chance to get that excitement to get in the postseason.
Yeah.
Okay, we can move on to our next topic then. Why don't we talk about our sponsor? Tonight, the show is brought to you by Game Time Network. Check them out on Facebook because they're going to have all kinds of sports talk, including our show here coming up. If you like sports talk, check them out. They'll be sure to hopefully scratch that itch for you. All right. So, Andrew, why don't you give us a brief synopsis of what our criteria is for picking out our divisions?
Yeah, absolutely. So we all three sat down individually, and we looked at every single division. We took last year's record, we took division records, and we said, well, what are they going to be next year, this season coming up? And it is pre-draft, so it might change, down the road. But where do we rank them now? And how we did is we ranked them, and then we scored them, and we're going to give you our ranking combined.
As a show, yeah. We'll give you the show's ranking. So basically, it's the numeric average of where everyone finished in each division.
All right.
Which division do you want to start with?
Man, let's start with them AFC East over there. I think you kind of want to take this one over, don't you?
Yeah, I got the best team out there, New England Patriots, Tom Brady.
At number 4, right?
We did rank the Patriots at number 1. We ranked the Bills at number 2, the Jets at number 3, and the Dolphins sitting there at the bottom at 4. Man, we had no love for the Dolphins at all. I mean, talk about depleting your roster. Talk about signing terrible signings. I mean, they literally are they giving up already?
It depends on if Tannehill comes back healthy. If he can come back healthy, they can be a legitimate team. But
what's legitimate? Let me challenge you on that a little bit because I'm not even sure with Tannehill that they're going to be good.
Legitimate can be 8-8. That's a legitimate team.
I don't see 8 wins on this team, man. I know they have Amendola, who was a Patriot forever, but
they got Tannehill. They could beat the Jets twice, and they could challenge. But they might maybe
I don't think they're beating the Jets.
I don't think
the Jets'
they're beating
defense
the Jets
was
either.
good.
They think about they can beat the Patriots in Miami.
They did last year, but I think with Sue departing too, I think that front line isn't going to be anywhere near as good as it was. Look, I think that team is just depleted. You might be looking at the next Browns out there in the AFC East. Now, I'm not saying with the longevity, but I'm saying for next season, they're in rebuild mode. I mean,
absolutely.
This was slash and burn. You don't cut a guy like Sue, who's 31 and only going to have a couple more years, unless you're like, hey, we're not going to be relevant. That's just what it is.
They still got Cameron Wake out there. Cameron Wake is still a good pass rusher.
Good player.
Yeah. 8 sacks a year.
But he's getting up there in age, and, look at Oakland. They had Khalil Mack all last year, and he's arguably the best pass rusher in the game. And, their defense was nothing last year.
They had no secondary at all.
Which is pretty much where the Dolphins are. There's shocks. Last year we picked the Jets to be, I didn't pick them to win a game.
The Dolphins secondary wasn't bad as the Raiders secondary because they at least challenged people. It was the offense that was the problem with the Dolphins. They had Jay Cutler right there.
They got my man Altron Werner in their secondary. It's game over. Okay, they're cashing it in. We're done. We're done.
When you have Jay Cutler as a quarterback, you have no chance.
I agree, but I'm not sure what much of a better chance Tannehill actually gives you.
And it's not. I don't think it just relies on quarterback. I mean, who is he going to throw to? Amendola? I mean, seriously.
Mr. Fourth Quarter. Come on, dude.
Dude, I'm sorry, but before he went to the Patriots.
Playoff Amendola.
Okay, but before he went to the Patriots, he was at the Rams. And during there, where they had to play him all the time because they had nobody else, he couldn't stay healthy. And the only reason he stayed healthy in the Patriots is because he wasn't relied on every time he turned around. When he goes out there, he's going to be the number one guy, and he can't stay healthy.
And I think when you look at New England, they know when to let somebody go. And I think Amendola, they looked at him, they're like, we'll give you $1 million to come back. But, I have no problem with him going after the money, especially at his point in his career. You have to, right? If someone's going to pay you 12 over 2, you got to go there.
Absolutely.
But for everyone listening, I will take $12 million over 2 years if you want to give that to me right now.
Especially the pay cuts he was taking with New England. He kept taking pay cuts. He's been taking pay cuts for the last 3 years.
Yeah. He definitely was a team player. He wanted to get his rings. He did. I feel like he felt like he was doing the team a service by taking those pay cuts, and eventually got to the point where it's like, all right, now it's my turn to get paid, and the Patriots are like, sorry, buddy, that's not how this team works.
When I was looking at this division, what really kind of got me was I think the Patriots are going to take a step back. They're lucky their division is weak. If you throw them anywhere else, in my opinion, in the AFC, I don't think they would be number one in their division. And the reason I say that is because there is discord in the hierarchy of it all. I mean, Belichick was not okay with the movement of Jimmy G. It looks like Tom Brady isn't okay right now. I know they're saying he's in Qatar doing stuff with his family, but he's not at workouts, and he usually always is. Gronkowski's not happy with his contract. Now, he hasn't gone out and said that. Someone from his camp said he's not happy, but when there's rumbles, that's usually the reason why.
I've heard Gronkowski runs even deeper than that. I've heard it's more of he doesn't feel like he's able to express himself on that team. And if anyone suppresses your ego and your kind of mantra, I think it's Bill Belichick. So, I mean, it's been a weird pairing, hasn't it? Gronk, who's this party boy, real wild, likes to express himself and joke around. And then Belichick, who is Mr. All Business. So maybe that's why we're seeing a little bit of friction. What do you think?
I don't think the Patriots have no problems. They're in the AFC East. They have no problem. They're going to win the division easily. And
it goes to my point it's a weak division.
I totally agree. That's 5 to 6 wins. Chalk them up now.
You know they're going to be, again, in the AFC championship game.
Well, I don't know.
Who in the AFC could challenge them?
Ask me that after the draft, but I agree. I mean, there's not a whole lot of teams I see really mixing it up with them.
One team can challenge them, that's the Steelers.
I don't even see the Steelers.
The Jaguars take a step back.
The reason I say, I think the Jags could be there. I think Doug Marrone is a little bit underrated as a coach, and we'll get around to this.
Yeah.
But Doug Marrone, you got to look at it. He moved into Buffalo when they had won, I think it was 4 or 5 games the year before. Instantly, they were 9-7, right on the cusp of making the playoffs. He moves on. Thought he was going to get a job. Wound up not, so he goes to Jacksonville as a position coach, and he takes them from a 2 or 3 win team to the AFC Championship overnight. I think Doug Marrone, for as much of a disciplinarian as he is, he's one of the better coaches that nobody's talking about.
You think about coaching, but the Jaguars had the talent. They kept picking in the top 5 for the last 6 years. You keep getting all that talent. It's easy to coach that talent.
Tell that to Cleveland. I mean, they've had a lot of high picks. The Jets have been up there for a while.
Cleveland doesn't know how to draft. That's Cleveland's fault.
The Jets have been up there for a while. You could say the same thing about the Jags. They've had a lot of first-round washouts, like Justin Blackmon.
The Jets have good players. The Jets they spend too much on defensive players and not on offensive players. What the Jags did is they went after what the coach wants. Like a running back, a bruising running back, and some quarterback that just manages the game.
I think what the Jags did well is
in a pass rush.
I understand that, and I agree with you. They definitely built up on the defense and everything. I think what they did is they looked at the Cowboys and they said, look what happened to them as soon as they took Zeke. They went from irrelevant to challenging for a playoff. They saw a similar guy in Fournette, so they're like, all right, let's just spend that high pick on him and try to emulate. Just pound the rock. And then we'll work on our defense, whereas the Cowboys were like, well, we spent all our money on our offensive line. Let's just, run the ball and hope for the best. So, I think the Jacksonville Jaguars, I know you said you think they might take a step back. I think they're going to take a step forward. I think the only thing holding them back is Blake Bortles, and that's why, as a Titans fan, I was ecstatic to see him stick around there. Because all the talk was them getting rid of him.
Well, let's go ahead and move to the AFC South, consider we're talking about it. I'll give you the rankings real quick. We did the Jaguars at number 1. We did the Texans at number 2. The Titans at 3.
Oh.
Which was a coin flip, by the way.
My heart.
And the Colts at number 4. And what you were saying, Dwayne, and I get it, when you talk about the Browns and the Jets, you talk about their drafts and how terrible they can't draft. Well, you know what? That's what they were saying about the Jags 2 years ago. They couldn't even draft anybody. I mean, no one that was totally panning out.
They changed the culture there with Tom Coughlin.
Oh, and I absolutely, completely agree with.
Change the culture.
Let me call a timeout. I think Tom Coughlin is not necessarily as important as everyone likes to talk about in the media. Doug Marrone, like I said, he's the coach. He's the guy in charge of everything. Tom Coughlin's sitting in the front office. He's not in the locker room with the guys. So you talk about changing the culture. I mean, this is all on Doug Marrone. Doug Marrone said, I went to Buffalo. I got my running back. We pounded the rock, and we played good defense. You know what? Good things happen. He did the same thing in Jacksonville, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, it's all Tom Coughlin. Mr. Let's run 3 running backs, 6 carries a game. No, I mean, everyone credits Coughlin, and I don't think Coughlin's done a bad job in Jacksonville, but everyone's talking about him like he single-handedly saved the team. I'm like, what about the head coach? The guy actually telling all these guys what's going on. I think it's all about Marrone, and then Coughlin is more of a backseat.
Coughlin created an atmosphere.
I'm not trying to yell. I want to try to yell at you.
No, Coughlin created an atmosphere there.
I was just yelling.
he created an atmosphere that does change it. And I'm not saying Marone didn't have nothing to do with it, because I know he did. I mean, I watched him calling the plays during the game. I mean, the man obviously knows how to coach an NFL team. But Coughlin's the one that came in there and said, okay, ownership, you don't get to just spend money. You don't just get to listen to these coaches. You got to...
Calais Campbell. I mean, Malik Jackson. They've spent money.
Look,
they have spent money.
They're spending money on important positions. They're not just throwing it out there.
But that was the thing. They felt like they were in the past. It's just it wasn't panning out because of... And again, this is my opinion. I think it was bad coaching. All of these guys on these teams, and this is what I think people forget a lot when we talk football, they're all pros. So I think if you get the right regime in there, good things can happen. Everyone looks at Cleveland and they're like, oh, wow, Cleveland's not a good team. I think a lot of that boils down to coaching, too, because they've got good players. They've been taking these high picks for years and years and years.
The GM, too. Sashi Brown was not a good GM.
We say that. We say that. And when it comes to his picks, who knows? But one thing he did was he got a lot of draft picks for Cleveland. Their GM now is going to be doing everything that, this is Brown's work. Everything in this draft that we're going to see is because Sashi Brown did all this work to get them the pick.
Let's go to the Browns when we get to them, guys. Yeah. We got a couple more teams to talk through right now.
Let's stick in the South. We had the Texans at number 2. I think a lot of it comes down to their health. They had Deshaun Watson get hurt. They had their defense, really banged up last year, like Watt, Merciless. Yeah, and their secondary pretty much fell apart. They re-signed Jonathan Joseph at 33 or 34 years old, so they're a little long in the tooth in the secondary. I think a lot of what they're doing is going to depend on, can these guys that have been hurt stay healthy?
Well, I think they'll clean up a lot of their secondary in the draft. I kind of believe that might be where they're going in their draft, is going to hit secondary a little bit. Man, and you're right. It's all about if they can stay healthy. But, the man who has the rock in his hand at all times is the most important person in the whole team. And then Deshaun Watson proved it. I saw him almost beat the Patriots. In my opinion, he should have won that game last year. I mean, this man can play. He can ball. I'm ready to see him come back. I hope he can stay healthy and make the AFC South fun again. It's not fun just to watch two mediocre teams battle it out, and all of a sudden somehow the Titans make it into the playoffs and pathetically, getting beat. But they beat my Chiefs, so it makes me cry a little bit.
Pathetically getting beat.
I think the Texans have a chance to win the division if their defense pans out. If their defense, if they have like a top-end defense, a top-5 defense, they can actually win the division because their offense cannot be stopped by any of these teams in that division. Because you got DeAndre Hopkins, you got Will Fuller as a deep threat, and then you got Miller as a running back. That's a trio that you can't stop.
Yeah, I think DeAndre Hopkins is one of under the radar. I know a lot of people talk about him, but they don't talk about him like Antonio Brown. They don't talk about him like Julio Jones. I think he's one of those guys that's right there with those guys. He is a monster because he plays in Houston versus New York or one of these big
how many
media areas.
Has he gone through? I mean, this...
Bad luck.
In my opinion, if he had someone like Roethlisberger or, Tom Brady throwing the ball, he would...
He's not in the playoffs either. He's not in the playoffs. Yeah. So people don't actually see him.
He'd unquestionably be the number one receiver in the NFL, in my opinion, but he didn't have that consistency at quarterback.
I'd put him at 3. I still think I'd put Julio and Antonio Brown ahead of him, but I think he's number 3, just because he doesn't have the tools that those guys have.
4. I got Odell ahead of him.
I like Odell. I just don't know if Odell, he'll go loud and he'll go quiet. Whereas Hopkins, he's 15 receptions a game. The guy will literally just go out there and catch everything you throw at him. He doesn't necessarily have that burning speed that like Julio and Antonio Brown have, which I think sets him a little behind him.
The wins.
I definitely think it's you look at Hopkins, you take him out of that. Look at the receiving core for Houston. It's all on him in Houston. I mean, actually impact wins. I think it's all on Hopkins in Houston. You don't get a better red zone threat than that, and you take him off that team, that offense is going to stall because they even showed you last year, like those other receivers, they're not very good.
Fuller has one game out of...
Fuller is good.
He has a 1 game out of 3 where he looks phenomenal, but then he disappears for 2 games.
His problem is his hands. He's had this problem going all the way back to college, too. He just drops way too many passes.
When they play against the Titans, he put up 150 receiving yards.
Okay, and what did he do for the rest of the season?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the issue. He can't stay consistently. I mean, he looks great for 1 game. He looks phenomenal. But
you got to think about the quarterback, too. The quarterback, Tom Savage is just...
let's be honest. Real. Tom Savage is a backup quarterback.
Tom Savage is not real.
He's probably probably middle of the pack backup quarterback. If we had to put him in the rankings, he's probably somewhere in the 50s or 60s, right? Would you take him as your backup on your team? Like your quarterback goes out. Do you want Tom Savage coming in the game?
Not really.
No.
I mean, I'm not excited about it either, but I'd take him over Matt Castle. And let me tell you,
absolutely.
I'd take that in a heartbeat because I think I can throw the ball farther than Matt Castle can.
Well,
Matt Castle, if you're watching this, I'm throwing the gloves down, okay?
No, I can't
Come on
go
out.
against Matt
Let's
Castle.
see.
Let's go ahead and talk about the Titans. Let's go ahead and talk about the Titans taking third. You know, man.
It was a coin flip. It was a bad coin flip, okay?
It was a one-sided coin.
1 yard short. But, I think the Titans are the most interesting team in the AFC South. I think they could finish fourth. I think they could finish first.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is with Andrew Luck coming back to the Colts, even with a bad roster, you put him with T.Y. Hilton, magic can happen, man. You know, they can outscore everybody. And I think this year you're really going to see, is Marcus Mariota any good? You know, there was a lot of speculation last year. Everyone was kind of down on him. But I think a lot of that was the offense. It was the very, very, very simple. I mean, we're talking high school offense here.
Predictable.
And he just didn't get a chance to really show his stuff. You know, the year before last, I should say, he had a great year. Had his most touchdowns, least interceptions. He was really getting a roll. And everything kind of fell apart when the offensive game plan was run, 8-yard curl when you need 13. So, I think that'll be the most interesting thing for the Titans season.
It's definitely going to be on him. It's definitely going to be, what can Mariota do? Because I like Mike Vrabel. I do. I think he's going to be a great coach someday. But it might not be this year. I mean, they changed all the coordinators out. That means more than likely a whole new offense, a new system.
I hope a whole new offense.
New verbiage. I mean, all that stuff is something to learn.
before.
And he's done it before, and it's great, but is it going to be good? Is it going to make the team a difference? And I think it's going to be a year or two before you really see him shine.
What do you think about the uniforms?
I'm not a big uniform guy. I think they're okay. I really like the letters on like the 99 and numbers that are normally sharp and look better, but the rounded numbers like the 8s I don't think look very good.
I think it put intimidation in the opponent because they had the powder blue that make them look soft. That's what I never believed in them.
The thing I like about the powder blue at least is it sets you apart. How many dark blue teams are out there? How many red and white and blue teams are out there? I mean, there's a lot of them. At the very least, when you
the helmets. The dark helmets are intimidating to some.
I like the dark helmets. I don't have a problem with that. I think they look good, the helmets anyway. But if I'm an NFL player, I don't think any one of those guys is like, I'm 330 pounds, but that man looks scary because he's wearing a dark color. I get the idea, the rationale behind it, and I think the Titans needed a change, and they were looking to get some publicity with the move, but. I think that's what most of it was for. It was just Let's get people talking about us in the offseason.
That's what I think so too. I think changing your uniform is so just for media and selling tickets. I mean,
they wanted to sell more jerseys, right?
Yeah, it literally means nothing to the team, the players. They'll put on whatever color uniform they got to and play the game.
I mean, they wear the Browns jerseys. They'll wear anything.
They just changed their uniform 2 years ago, so it literally made no difference.
And then last place, we had the Colts in this division. And I think the reason we took that is pretty obvious. That roster, just pretty depleted, guys, right? There's not much going on.
It depends on what they do in the draft. If they get offensive line help and they pick up a running back in the draft, they can challenge for the division because they have Andrew Luck.
Andrew Luck has yet to throw a football. So what do you mean? I mean, Andrew Luck hasn't done anything yet. You can't talk about the Andrew Luck of the past.
But
He's been out of football for a whole year.
Division.
He hasn't touched a ball in almost, 15 months? You can't sit there and talk about Andrew Luck doing something. Andrew Luck got to, in my opinion, completely prove himself again.
Who would you rather have, Andrew Luck or Marcus Mariota in this division?
Right now, Marcus Mariota.
Would I rather have Mariota playing or Luck on the bench? I mean, I'd take Mariota.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we're talking heyday, then give me Luck. Sure. Even as a Titans fan, I can admit, Luck
you can't live in the past.
Has more top-end talent. But the question is, going forward, who would you take? And with a question mark like Luck, I might take the safe bet and say, let me go with Mariota. With LaFleur coming in, and the Titans, low-key, have some of the best, not the best, but they have some of the deepest receiving core in the NFL right now. And it's like under Robisky and Mike Mularkey, you just didn't get to see those guys because we always had two tight ends on the field and a running back and sometimes like a fullback. It's like we have one receiver on the field when you have a roster full of 5 guys that are good. But we can push on to our next division.
Yeah, let's go to the AFC North. Man, we had with the Steelers blown away taking number one. We had no doubt they were going to take number one.
Unanimous.
Yeah. Number two would be
the call.
Very true. I think weren't we the same on each one?
We were.
Everyone.
Yep.
Right down the
Ravens at
list.
number 2, Bengals at number 3, and the Browns at number 4. And the hardest part in here, in my opinion, was literally 3 and 4. I think the Bengals are going to completely fall off the wagon, and I think the Browns have picked up enough to possibly beat them by a game.
The Bengals are talking about changing everything defensively, offensively. They got to change something because they had a couple good games right when they changed their offensive coordinator around game 3 or 4, and then after that they just went quiet.
Yeah.
I mean, they have AJ Green. They have, did they re-sign Tyler Eifert? I don't remember.
I think they did.
If Eifert's coming back, I mean, they've got some players, but at the end of the day, do you see them competing even with the Ravens, who's, like we've said before, they're just a gross team, but they always wind up pulling it out, right? Everyone's like, they don't have any good players, and then they wind up second.
They always seem
barely
to be
missing out on beating the Steelers.
Yeah, they seem to always be above 500.
They have the quarterback is, but you got to think about. Like, they have no running game. Offensive line is terrible. And the defense is just getting old.
When they let Andrew Whitworth go to the 49ers, there was definitely a hole on that left side of the offensive line.
He went to the Rams.
Very true.
He went to the Rams.
Yeah, he was
the Rams.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the Rams. I knew he went to California. I don't know where.
Well, I think the biggest thing with Andy Dalton is he's like literally the exact center when you're rating quarterbacks. He's about number 16 or 17. He's too good to replace, but he's not good enough to really win you a Super Bowl. I mean, you look at the draft, and if you took somebody to replace Dalton, you're probably not doing better than him. But on the other hand, he's not really, like, unless you have a perfect team that's just stacked out, kind of like Minnesota style, I don't see him ever getting a ring. Do you? No. And then we can talk about the Ravens. Again, they're just one of those teams that, we've talked about it in the past.
Always
that
stick around.
They're just, you look at their offense, you're like, who do they have? I don't know. They signed Jeremy Maclin, okay?
Who's now released.
Okay, and there and gone again. And they signed Michael Crabtree this offseason. So it's like they have guys that were like could be's one days possibly in the past, but not really so much anymore. And you just don't see that. I mean,
their defense is always stout.
Always
stout. Always. They have. You got to think about what they might do in the draft, because they might go after receivers. They might go after defensive players. They love some Alabama guys. They love Alabama guys.
I think it's all depending on draft. I mean, they have so many holes, across the whole entire roster of their team. Nothing shines, but like we said in the past, I mean. And
we say that, but they're going to be hanging right around the 6, 7, 8 spot in the AFC, and we're like, damn, how is this team even sneaking into the playoffs? Who's their receiver? I don't even know. But they'll be around.
It's their defense. The defense can force turnovers. They're going to be up there.
And just real quick, do we think Cleveland can get out of the basement of this division?
I think
it depends how they draft. It depends on the draft pick.
They have a lot of picks.
If they can draft you get like a running back, quarterback, and then you get some possible starters in the late rounds, you can actually challenge for second or third in this division.
I'll give you third.
I'll give
you third. I don't know if they're going to beat the Ravens just consistently over it. They lost a lot of close games last year. I know they didn't win a single one, but I mean, hell, they took the Titans into a 12-9 loss, like deep in overtime. So it can be done.
Took the Titans into overtime.
Yeah, the Titans were a playoff team too, and everyone was healthy on the Titans too, which is one of those things that tells me that. It was an ugly team, but they had the pieces to at least be close in a lot of these games.
And all they did was add pieces. I'm a huge fan of Tyrod Taylor. I mean, an NFL quarterback who doesn't turn the ball over. Carlos Hyde, a proven running back, literally, in my opinion, didn't really get a good rep out in the 49ers. I think he's going to do a lot better with the Browns. Jarvis Landry, they paid the man like crazy, probably a little overpaid him, but he's a great receiver. And they also re-signed Josh Gordon.
You got David Njoku out there, a second-year tight end.
Yeah. Did they sign Gary Barnidge back too?
No.
They let him go? Okay. But, I mean, those weapons right there, I mean, they got to do better. I think 0-16, they got to do better.
The defense is getting better. You got Myles Garrett. That's a stud right there. He only played in like 8 games last year. Still had 8.5 sacks. as a rookie. You think he can improve on this next year? And then you got Mbagwa on the other side. He had 5.5 sacks. He can improve. If they get like a pass rusher like Bradley Chubb at pick number 4, they can be a stout tandem at like Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram in the AFC North.
It's AFC West, and that's actually we're going to go ahead and go to the AFC West, where it's close to my heart, if you can't tell. But we have the Chargers at number 1, and my Chiefs at number 2, Broncos at 3, and Raiders at 4. Man, the Raiders are not liked here in this group. Did they just fall off everyone's list? Did John Gruden take too many cuts, and he's just signing the wrong people? Why don't we like them, guys?
They have no defense at all. They can't stop anyone. All they have is Khalil Mack, and that's it. There are no other guys out there that can stop. They can't stop a rolling train.
I think one of us could go out there and play secondary for him, too. They have nobody back there.
He called me, and I declined.
Yeah. Sorry, John. I'm not trying to get hurt. But, no, I mean, I really think when you look at the Raiders, the only saving grace they have is Derek Carr, who's a young quarterback who's, he showed some moxie. He played last year with a broken back, and everyone was sitting there talking about, is Derek Carr regressed? Has he taken a step back? It's like, let's see you throw a football with a fractured spine. I don't even imagine how tough you have to be to go out there and do that. But to take hits like that too, if they're going to move forward, it's got to be all on the offense this year. They're going to try to rebuild their defense, I'm sure, in the draft. But at some point, a lot of rookies coming in, you're not just going to overnight flip a switch and be good at defense.
You got to get somebody to pair with Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack is the only player they have on defense. And he can't do it all by himself.
I'd say you almost flood secondary.
Yeah.
Just take 2 or 3, take 2 corners, take a safety, and hope that Mack can get there, put pressure on him, and then you have quarterbacks making mistakes. Because other than that, I mean...
Well, I think Mack's proven he can get there, and that's what you need. You need ball hawks and people that turn the ball over in the secondary, and that's what they did not have last year.
Yeah, I mean, Mack is possibly the best pass rusher in the game right now, but if you have no help on the second end, it's like they'll just sit there and burn those guys before you have any chance to get back there.
Man, the Chargers at number 1, what were you guys thinking? I definitely did not vote that.
I mean, Phillip Rivers is low-key one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, and he's finally getting that team built back up. It seems like for years they've just been a bad team with a good quarterback, and now finally, they still need some work on the offensive line, but they have Melvin Gordon, who's a good running back. They have, good receivers in Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, their first-round draft pick from this year. He spent a lot of time out, but he's still a good receiver, and they have depth at the position, and their defense is coming together. Bosa's getting better. Bosa's, really stepped up and really shown that he deserves to be as high of a pick as he was.
Melvin Ingram on the other side.
Exactly. I mean, they are turning into what might be the whole package. They need to have a good draft, like a lot of teams, but, I think when you look at them, they're the most complete team in the AFC West.
I mean, I think you nailed it when you were talking about turnovers. This team turned the ball over.
Yeah.
Every time. I mean, that's number 1 goal to a good defense. And in my opinion, the draft all relies on that offensive line. Phillip Rivers got to stay off his back. He's got to stop running for his life. They got good receivers. They got a good running back. I think that's where they have to go. So, to me, I think they're going to be that team again where it's right on the cusp of going. Do I think personally that they'll get there? They might be a wild card. I see someone else winning the division. I couldn't tell you who that is exactly. You might have a guess. But
the Broncos. Yeah.
So that's my opinion. I think they focus on that offensive line. They pick up a couple other ball hawks on the defense because it doesn't hurt. Ball hawks
on the defense because you see the corners they have. They have like the best 2 corners two of the best corners in the league.
They say Verrett
healthy.
Jason Verrett is one of the highest rated
right,
corners.
And you would say that
he has to stay healthy. If he stays on the field, they can.
Here it is, though, and I completely agree with that statement. But the problem is, as soon as you start realizing that people are good, they want to get paid, and you have to have someone behind them to replace them. They're always looking for someone to replace the guy that's number 1. I'm telling you right now.
And here's the reverse of that: when you have a great pass rush, it hides a lot of weakness in your secondary because teams don't have time to sit back and throw the ball. So I agree, Verrett, he's one of the highest rated corners in the game.
Absolutely.
But the rest of them, I think they're a little bit more of a question mark, and they might be feeding off of a lot of the pass rush's success. I agree, they've been good, and they can continue to be good, but, you take Bosa out or you take Ingram out, like you said, and, they may not, that's when you really get to see how good is our secondary actually. Okay.
Yeah. Well, let's go to number 2. We got the Chiefs. Man, they're going to take a giant step back on defense. I'm not going to lie. I know that for a fact. And they're going to take a giant step back on their quarterback play. He's going to turn the ball over, which we're not used to. But, man, this offense is going to fly all over the field. I mean, a great running back, a number 1, a number 2, and a number 3 receiver, in my opinion, with Hill, Sammy Watkins, and Mike Connolly coming back from injury. I said Chris Connolly coming back from injury. You know, I'm super excited to watch him. You know, obviously Kelsey on the tight end. I'm super excited to watch him. They, have one of the most underrated offensive lines. It's going to be interesting. Hopefully Andy Reid knows what he's doing with the defense, can change it around, get some draft picks. It's definitely where I think they're going to rely heavy on during the draft is their defensive side of the ball. Man, I can't wait to see that offense fly.
Well,
No first rounder.
True, or second, right? Didn't they
No,
trade
we got
first
a
and
second.
second? Or
No,
was
we
it
got
first and third they traded Houston?
Yeah, we got a second.
Yeah, but they gave up a lot to get Mahomes this year, and or last year, I should say. So I guess we'll get to see how good he is. I think he's the unknown, and I think that's why I put them at second. Because you have a guy like Phillip Rivers that's proven that, he can sit there and throw. He's like Matt Stafford. He could throw all day long. And I think Mahomes could be a good quarterback. But the question is, there are a lot of guys that we thought could have been good quarterbacks. You look at Vince Young in his first 8 games or RG3 in his first 8 games, and you're like, those guys lit the world on fire. Mahomes, he's going to go through a little bit of that growing period where, teams have to actually get film on him and learn. The question is, what does he evolve from there? And I think he could be great, but that unknown is what put them in second place for me.
I have nothing to say about the Chiefs. I just don't think they're going to do anything this year. I just think Pat Mahomes is going to just have them growing pains, throw it all over the field, try to do the air raid offense, and they're going to have a lot of turnover this year.
Well, the good thing about the Chiefs, I will say, even with the rookie coming in, you have a good running back in Kareem Hunt, and you have a good offensive line that, like you said, might be a little underrated. So you could sit there and lean on him. You can lean on Hunt, and then you have Mahomes only throw it when he needs to. The Titans have done this for years, regardless of who our quarterback's been, and it's a good way to sneak your way to 8 to 10 wins if you're good everywhere. The question is, what do they do with the defense, and can they bounce back from, losing a bunch of guys and getting older and everything? That'll be the biggest question.
So we got the Broncos at number 3. I just think Case Keenum is not the guy. I just don't see it. He didn't do well out in it with the Rams. Of course, he had Jeff Fisher.
Timeout with Jeff Fisher.
Jeff Fisher is one of the worst coaches.
One of the worst.
I disagree.
8-8.
I disagree. I disagree.
Coaching
He's somewhere in the middle because obviously the guy is very close to 500. That was his nickname, Coach 500. I wouldn't call him the worst.
He's actually under 500 now.
He is under 500. He's also one loss away from being the most losingest coach in NFL history. Fun little fact. That's why you might not see Jeff Fisher again because he doesn't want that title. But, I think you look at the Broncos and Case Keenum. The thing I would say is, remember, this is the guy that beat out Jared Goff 2 years ago. I get it was in a bad offense, but they looked at him and they said, you know what, this guy's better than Jared Goff. And we look at the progression Jared Goff had moving into a good offense. I think if you put Keenum in a good offense, again, he'll show you what he can do. Do I think you're going to get Vikings numbers? No, but he's got good receivers there.
He does.
Especially if they can get Emmanuel Sanders back. They have Demaryius Thomas. You got to work on that line, but they could still be a good passing offense.
They don't have an offensive line. It was garbage last year.
Very true, but they've had some injuries. They had some injuries too.
Garrett Bowles is out for the whole season,
and he was up and down.
Their top top pick. In
yeah,
the draft last year.
even when he played, he was up and down. He had good games, he had bad games. I think that's indicative of being a rookie. But Garrett Bowles coming back, and then maybe they add another piece or two this draft. I think Keenum can succeed there. I really do think Keenum can succeed. And supposedly Devin Booker's their guy. That's why C.J. Anderson wasn't getting the carries because they were like, we want to get the ball in Devin Booker's hands. Now, me as a fantasy owner, I'm like, no, don't do that. But, maybe he does evolve into that. They get to work with this guy behind the scenes. I don't. You just got to trust that, maybe they know what they're actually doing.
I bet Elway hopes he does.
That is true.
Their defense just needs to improve. They need to stop the run because they can't stop the run at all.
They got to get better on the inside. I think their pass rush is good. They have Wolf and they have Von Miller, and I think those two guys are very good at getting after the pass.
Replace Keeps the lead.
Yes, they will need a replacement for Aqib Talib, but their secondary is still good with Chris Harris. Exactly.
Bradley Roby's not. I don't think you can put him on the outside. I think he's a nickel corner.
I think he's very good on the inside, but I think in a pinch you could put him on the outside. At the very least, if you're looking at it like, well, we have a weaker corner, but we still have Chris Harris on the other side, there's a lot of teams that could say we don't even have that.
Yeah.
So,
Chris Harris is
I agree
definitely
with
good.
you. I would be looking to it, but I think if I'm John Elway, the first thing I'm doing, I'm drafting linemen in rounds 1, 2, and 3, and we're going to find a way to protect Keenum and keep him upright.
I think that's important too.
And then maybe a tight end in round 4 to get him someone else to throw to. I don't know. But, with that, why don't we slide over to the NFC side?
Well, I'm actually going to take a beer break, grab a beer real quick. I don't know if you want to do an
Let's
advertisement.
do round two, boys. So while Andrew's grabbing a beer, let's just remind everybody that we are a part of Game Time Network on Facebook, which is going to be a crew of shows, hopefully showing content every day. You're going to get to see them. You're going to get to see us. And look for them on Facebook and soon to be other social media platforms. And as we move into round 2, we're going to be talking about some NFC teams. Guys, NFC versus AFC. Which division do you think is better before we start? Which conference do you think is better before we start?
Oh, NFC, hands down.
Yeah, I got to go 3 for 3. I mean, the AFC, I think if I was one of those, that's where you want to play. But to me, it's like in the NBA, it's like playing in the East. Any one of those teams could make the playoffs simply because it's so weak. The NFC, I don't think that's really the case.
Well, let's go ahead and do it. The Super Bowl champions. Let's do the NFC East. Obviously, we all have the Eagles at number 1. We got the Giants at number 2, jumping up there. Cowboys at 3, and the Redskins at 4. Man, you guys are hating on Alex Smith, huh? Redskins at 4?
I think Alex Smith is the only thing the Redskins have going for them.
Receivers, they have only John Dawson. That's Josh Johnson. That's the only receiver they have.
You take Alex Smith out of there, I think I might put him at 5 in that division. I mean, you look at that team, and I like Chris Thompson. I think he's a good player. I think he's a great fantasy pickup. Tip for you guys if you're playing fantasy football. But I don't see him as a guy that plays 16 games. I see him as a guy that plays 6 or 7. He's just really, really small. He's dynamic, but he's small, and he's injured a lot.
He was injured a lot in college, too.
So Jordan Reed.
Yep, Jordan Reed's
Yeah,
another
and Jordan
issue.
Reed, it seems like that guy's made of glass. I mean, I like Jordan Reed. I think he's a fantastic tight end, but he can't stay on the field. And when you can't stay on the you can't help the team from the bench. So other than that, their line was somewhere in the middle, even though they had spent on it, in the past here. And their receivers, like you said, everybody's gone. That's why Kirk Cousins took a step back last year because he had 2,000-yard receivers, and they let them both go into Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon. First time in history that's ever happened that they had both receivers get 1,000 yards and both of them to be on new teams. So they just haven't done a good job replacing.
Man, we had the Giants jump up to number 2. Do you think it's that big of a deal to go Odell Beckham Jr. back, or is it something else?
I don't think it's even Odell. I obviously he's a game changer, and we've talked about this before the show, right? Odell, we got him as a top 5 receiver. I think we all have him at different spots, but I think what it is they have a good defense. They have a lot of names on their defense. They have they signed Nate Solder to improve their offensive line.
Big money.
And they have a high draft pick. This is too good of a team to have the second pick, right?
I think if they go running back, which I think Saquon Barkley will be their pick at number 2, if Cleveland doesn't take it, I cannot see him not going number 2 in this division and possibly going number 1. I think that's what they're missing is a run game. Their run game has literally been garbage since Tiki Barber has been gone since 2006.
They have no offensive line at all. They can't.
Well, they have a left tackle now.
But they're already
one player doesn't.
You would actually be quite surprised.
You say that until the left tackle is gone. Remember, this is the guy that faces up with the best pass rusher on most teams. I'm not saying I agree with you. The rest of the line needs an overhaul, but you can do that in an off season.
What about the Rams? The 2 years ago, they completely were terrible on the offensive line. You put Andrew Whitworth over there, and he was great. I mean, maybe one player is the thing. Maybe they just need that one leadership that's like, hey, this is how you play the game of offensive line, and they all take after and go, man, he's right.
I'm going to split the middle here. I'm actually with both of you. Yes, it's very difficult to build an offensive line overnight, but on the other hand, it can be done because, like you said, look at the Rams. So I think if they do invest, especially in the draft, I mean, except for their offensive line, they should be a good team. And even you look at that defense, I looked at that team, I had them winning the division last year, and I had the Eagles in second. But it's like, how do you take that team that's that good on defense and finished second worst in the NFL. To me, it's like everybody quit. And you look at their head coach, McAdoo.
Yeah, McAdoo, yep.
You look at their head coach and you're like, I got to pin it all on you, man. You lost the team.
Well, with that, let's go to Cowboys. Cowboys at number 3. Man.
They think a challenge for the division.
You think so, huh?
You see their pass rush? They had the best pass rusher in the NFL, DeMarcus Lawrence.
DeMarcus Lawrence was a good player last year.
Yeah, he literally came out of nowhere, too.
Yeah. They have him on the franchise tag, which is a lot of money.
He came out of nowhere only because he's finally on the field. All them PDUs, all that.
Well, maybe they just didn't catch him. Maybe that's why he was in the backfield so much.
He did a little bulked up a little bit.
Now, their defense is going to be rough.
I think it's going to be rough, too.
I think we all kind of see that coming. You had Scandrick request a release and everything. So who do they have left in their secondary? Jeff Heath? That's about the only one I can name off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But
Byron Jones. You got Byron Jones out there. Uzier. You got some.
And the problem is none of those guys are any good.
You can name them, but do they make a difference on the field?
A lot of young players, but I think the offense the offensive line has to come back. It has to get together. Tyron Smith has to get healthy, and the only thing is, Dak Prescott hasn't improved. Dak Prescott has to try to get the ball down the field, and Ezekiel Elliott just has to stay on the field.
Yeah, I think the suspension killed him.
I think that's what killed him. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you put Zeke in there, maybe the season turns out a little different for him.
He should have took all his games at the very beginning of the season and then played for the last of the season.
I
shouldn't have fought it.
I don't have any problem with him fighting it because you gotta
fight it. That's your name. You gotta fight.
Exactly.
I get what you're saying, but even Tom Brady took suspension. Tom Brady's way bigger name.
Tom Brady sued him for like 3 years to take that suspension, right?
But you're getting
Tom Brady still fought for his name.
So
he
how
gave up.
many games was he going to go on suspension for? How many was it? 6?
Yep.
Yeah.
It was
All right.
6
So
games.
let's just say for an example, they lost every single one of those games. They went 0-6, but he came back and let's just say he won 9. I mean, it might have been a different scenario.
I'm not buying it.
I mean, they were 9-7 last year, but I'm just saying. It could have been different. They might have won one game last year at the beginning. He separated it. He confused the offense. Okay, is he going to be suspended? Is he not going to be? I mean,
I'll give you don't like the uncertainty, but I'm not buying the take the suspension. Like, first off, like you said, you got to defend your name, number one, because if you sit there and just accept it, you're going to be known as that dirty guy that.
Yeah,
exactly. It's almost an admission. It's almost an admission of guilt.
Regardless if he took the suspension or not, it's always going to be on his name.
And I think if you walk in there and you go 0-6, I don't mean to cut you off, but moving on to your other point of him just taking the suspension, if you go 0-6 or 1-5, the team is going to quit. We see that happen a lot in the NFL, where once you get behind, you're like, there's no way we're catching anyone.
Man, I don't know. I don't really see quitting that team. I think the suspension really hurt him with the on and off. Is he going to be there? Is he not going to be there?
He had Tyron Smith get injured in that game against Atlanta when that guy had 6 sacks.
Doesn't help. It doesn't help. I agree, but injuries are a part of the game too. I think he would have got injured regardless, but I think definitely as Zeke, I have no problem with him fighting it, especially if in your heart of hearts you believe that you didn't really do anything. But, it's like you can't just – if you sit there and take it, that suspension is like the next guy that has any kind of question, all of a sudden Roger Goodell's like, well, I've suspended Zeke Elliott, I've suspended Tom Brady, you're not special. It's almost like a power – it's almost the dichotomy of the power control. If you don't fight it, then all of a sudden no one else will be able to fight it. All right, guys, let's talk about the Eagles. I mean, you sit there and look at Philadelphia, unanimous number 1 pick again. Does everyone see them repeating, or what do you think?
They're only going to help themselves going into the draft. I mean, even though they're taking the last pick, I mean, all you're doing is picking a starter or a special teams captain or, anybody that's just going to fill a hole that your second guy might not be just as good as you want him to be, or you're replacing a starter. I mean, you got to get better.
I love the defensive line. I just love it.
I do too.
Getting Haloti Anada and then getting Michael Bennett. They lost Vinny Curry, but Michael Bennett and Haloti Anada can replace that. Their pass rush is just so dangerous, and
they're deep. They have a lot of good pass rushers. It's not just one. I mean, they have very good guys, but again, you can sit there and rotate everybody in. That's fresh.
You got Hicks coming back on the linebacker, and you got Jason Peters coming back on the left tackle. You just got a stacked team right there.
Now, the one thing I will say is look at Atlanta. because we were saying the same thing about Atlanta last year. Everyone's like, look at that offense. They're unbeatable. Their defense is young. They're only going to get better. I do believe in the Super Bowl hangover, so I'm not necessarily going to sit there and say,
but they won.
The
they didn't
again.
lose.
They were good, but I think the Eagles will be good. But if we're talking about going back to the Super Bowl,
well, we usually talk about a hangover.
That.
We talk about the loser not being as good as they were the previous year.
True, but it usually winds up, unless your name is New England, it usually winds up being the winner, too, that doesn't always have as good of a season.
Well, let's go ahead and go on to the NFC North. We got the Vikings at number 1, the Packers at number 2, the Lions at 3, and the Bears at 4. Man, those Packers took a jump up from last year, huh, guys?
Yeah, I think A-Rod is he's the total change. He's the game changer. If you keep A-Rod healthy, they can beat anyone in the NFL on any given Sunday. You take A-Rod out of that, they're not looking so hot. And I think that's why we have him at number 2. It's just like that team is kind of like the Colts, where they're so dependent on the quarterback that, you take that guy out of the mix and it totally everything falls apart.
It definitely fell apart for him last year. There's no doubt about it.
I don't believe in them. It's not this year because of the receivers that they lost. You take Jordan Nelson, they lost, and what was the tight end they lost? What was the tight end name?
They lost Martellus Bennett.
Yeah,
Martellus Bennett.
But it's not like he was lighting the world on fire.
They brought in Jimmy Smith.
Jimmy Graham.
Jimmy Graham. Can't even talk, but yeah, Graham. Does he replace him?
He can, but you got to think about the outside receivers. Jordan Nelson was close with Aaron Rodgers. He had that chemistry with Aaron Rodgers, and that's going to mess up. And then they fired his offense. His quarterback coach.
Yeah, no, he's definitely
quarterback coach.
He definitely expressed his disconcern about what they're doing up at the front office. But
that's the most concerning thing to me. It's like you have to re-sign this guy to an extension, and if all of a sudden he feels like he's not involved in everything, if I'm a GM, I'm sitting here listening to that like, okay, well, what do you want to be involved in, I still think they're going to be second in the division. The only reason I put the Vikings ahead of them is because I think the Vikings are a complete team. Them bringing Kirk Cousins in, I think they've upgraded at quarterback. And you can't name, except for maybe second cornerback, what other needs do they have on that team?
You got Dalvin Cook is coming back, too. You got to think about the running game.
You got Dalvin Cook?
You got him coming back. You got those great receivers on the outside, Thielen and Diggs. You got Rudolph out there, tight end. So they're a stacked team out there. The defense could actually be better than it was last year because they have another year under their belt.
Exactly. They're stacked on defense. They have great corners. They have great linebackers. Yeah, exactly. It's the most stacked team in the NFL, and for them to have the money to bring in Kirk Cousins, I think it's a unique thing. Usually when you have that talented of a roster, you don't have the money to go dump, $27 million a year on Kirk Cousins. It's amazing to me.
It just shows you what Zimmer's doing out there. He's building from the draft. You're not having to spend big money on names to build your team up. I think you nailed it with Dalvin Cook. That guy's just a stud. If he wouldn't have hurt himself last year, he would have been Rookie of the Year, in my opinion, and probably took the rushing title as well. That guy's going to come back hopefully healthy. I do see a little bit concerned on their wide receiver group just because there's not a really big name besides Stephon Diggs. But, they seem to make it happen regardless without having him.
And Adam Thielen was quietly, one of the better possession receivers in the game. Even with Case Keenum, I think you put him with a guy like Kirk Cousins that can sling it a little bit. I think the sky's the limit for this team. If they add a third guy, I'm suspecting they might in this draft.
I think they will too.
They add a third guy that's somewhat competent, they're going to just tear it up. I don't think there's a better outlook on a team than maybe the Vikings this year.
Treadwell has to improve. Has to improve. Treadwell, their first-round receiver from a couple years ago.
Right.
He has to improve.
Ole Miss.
And I think Adam Thielen, he had 1,100 yards last year. I think he could be better this year because they got a better quarterback in Kirk Cousins.
And with Dalvin Cook coming back, teams are going to try to focus in on the run, and it's just more space for the receivers. I think when you look at Treadwell, you can almost call that water under the bridge. Yeah, I think they can admit it's a swing and a miss. He's there. If he improves, awesome. But if not, you've got two good other receivers. You have Kyle Rudolph as a good tight end. You have receiving options. He's almost a luxury now as opposed to a necessity. There's not many teams that can say, we missed on the first-round receiver, but we still got a bunch of other guys. Who cares?
So no love for the Bears, huh? No one thinks that they can do, better than 5-11 last year. They won some games that you didn't think they were going to win. They got a great running game. the receiver and the quarterback, that's still kind of all up in the air. I mean, he's going into his second year. They're trying to replace their receivers, but not signing Cameron Meredith, which I think hurts them. But they brought in Allen. So I mean, what do you guys think?
Not signing Meredith was a bizarre move, wasn't it? I mean, for he got like 2 for 12, I think, in New Orleans. I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
But for that kind of money, to not bring back the guy that looked like he was your number one receiver 2 years ago, I think it's weird. I know they signed Allen Robinson, but they had the money to spend and they let him walk, which tells me there's something going on behind the scenes. I think the reason I have the Bears down at the bottom is because Mitch Trubisky's a question mark. You know, we don't know what he's going to be. He was a good, kind of placeholder last year when they didn't have any receivers. Now that they're actually bringing in an offense and a coordinator like Matt Nagy, I get he's the head coach, but he was a good coordinator.
He'll probably call the plays for a while.
I'm certain he will. But bringing a guy like that in, it'll really show, is Trubisky the real deal? Was he worth the pick?
I believe in the Bears as the third team in the division. They're going to be above the Lions only because I believe in Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy can coach, can call plays. He's a good coach. And you got to think about that defense. That defense it was real good last year. It was a top 10 defense last year, and you got good players coming back. You got good secondary out there, and the running backs are stout. Tariq Cohen.
They are good at running back, and I think that's going to bring us to our first. Maybe that brings us to our first beer bet of the night. You know what? I'm willing to bet that the Lions beat the Bears this season, and the reason I'm going to say that, it's all on Matt Stafford. They brought in Patricia as the head coach over there in Detroit, and if he can fix that defense, I know he's not working with a whole lot, but if he can fix that defense and really get them firing on all cylinders, you take a passer like Matt Stafford, I don't think the Bears have a chance.
So you going 2-0 or 0-2, like you say, or 1-1?
No. I think the Lions will finish higher this season than the Bears will.
Can't go that far.
Man, I'll go ahead and take that bet with you. The Lions possibly could take a step back. They're changing all their coaching. I mean, it's a possibility they could take a step back. Their defense is getting a little bit older. I'll go ahead and take that bet with you.
All right, so you got the Bears. I got the Lions.
Sounds like a plan.
All right.
I don't believe in Matthew Stafford, but I still can't.
How do you not believe in Matt Stafford? The guy throws for 5,000 yards like it's nothing. I mean, this is his like third or fourth year in a row throwing for like 5,000 yards. The guy is a passing machine. I know he throws a lot, which inflates those numbers, but I think at this point he's going to turn the ball over a little bit, sure, but he's also that guy that he's like Brett Favre. You'll see the turnovers, but you'll see great plays and everything too.
Can't be good teams.
The question is, I really think, can Matt Stafford get a good enough defense on his team to really let him do his work? Because that's the thing they've been missing for years.
I think the Lions are going to be taking a running back in the draft, and I think if they pick the right one or the right combo, whatever it is, I think that's going to make the whole difference in the world. I mean, if they can really get someone behind that offensive line to carry the rock, better than seem like negative 2 yards every time they touch the ball.
I believe that's a defensive player. Because Matt Patricia is a defensive coach. You gotta.
I see everyone talking about that, and I see it, and I'm like, well, that makes sense. He wants his guy back there, but what's the number one hole they've had in the team? It's a running back.
Well, no, I've seen that, but I think Patricia's a smart guy, and I think he might be looking at it like, look, we tried to rebuild that with Jim Bob Cooter, still the best named coach in the entire NFL. But they tried to rebuild the run game last year, and it didn't work. They have a very good pass blocking line, not so much on the run blocking line. So I think they might just sit there and try to sell out and say, we'll be like the Patriots. We'll line up with 3 to 4 receivers every play, put a scat back there, and if we want to run, it'll be a short pass 2 yards to the running back. I don't really think they're going to try to change an identity overnight. I think they might just sit there and embrace what they are.
Yeah, they got Theo Riddick as a good catch running back.
Abdullah can do it, and then they brought in LeGarrette Blount that can sit there, and if you need to get that yard, you put him in there and let him smash the ball. So I think the North is another interesting division. I think the top and the bottom are pretty much set out as long as the Packers can keep Rodgers healthy and the Vikings are as good as we think they'll be. I think those teams will be top, the others will be bottom. So why don't we talk about the NFC South?
Yeah, absolutely. In my opinion, this was the hardest one to really get the top 3. I think we all kind of sit there and go, man, who is it? Who's going to win this division? We got the Saints at number 1. We got the Falcons at 2, Panthers at 3, and the Buccaneers at the lonely 4. Man, we have no faith in those Bucs, do we?
Well, I think Winston's kind of in the same
as
spot.
Winston. Yeah. turnover machine.
Oh, absolutely. I think if he's by
Just a
game
machine.
6 and you're talking he's probably already double-digit turnovers, I could see him getting benched. I really can. I could see him getting benched for the rest of the year.
I don't see Fitzmagic.
Well, who
taking
says they're
him.
not taking a quarterback in this draft? Literally,
Me.
you can't.
They're not taking a quarterback
You
in that
can't.
number.
I'll make a beer bet on that one.
You can't keep turning the ball over, and this is all that man has done is turn the ball over. I literally could see it. 6 games in, double-digit turnovers. This man is going to sit on the bench. It might not be for the rest of the year, but it might be a game or two. It's very much a possibility.
So what week would you say he's going to be benched? I'd be willing to make this a beer bet too.
Well, I don't think I know exactly what week it is because
How many weeks?
Because I haven't seen the schedule.
Okay.
If I see the schedule, I'll be talking about a beer bet with you.
I got you.
But I think it's going to
We'll
take.
table this one.
I think it's going to take until he gets to double-digit turnovers that they'll probably consider benching him.
I don't think they'll bench him. They're not going to bench him. Not with their first-round quarterback.
How many years do you give a first-round quarterback, a first pick in the whole draft? How many years do you keep giving him? And he's not proven it. At this point, Mariota's outplayed him. Mariota's took his team to the playoffs. So
Won a playoff game, I will remind you.
Yeah, and he's got better weapons around him. Dude, Mike Evans is a complete monster out there. You know,
But other
his,
than that,
his run game wasn't the greatest, but you know what?
Yeah,
Let me
O.J.
stop you.
Howard,
Let me stop you right there.
could-
OJ Howard's good. Cameron Brady's a very good receiving tight end. I know he's not Dallas Clark when it comes to receiving, but he's a good receiving tight end. And they had Deshaun Jackson. They had some players.
That's what I'm saying.
They had some players. Now, the one thing I will say about Winston, his line was in shambles. They had no running game because Doug Martin took a step back. But I think this is he and Mariota. Everyone's been comparing them since they came in the league. This is really going to be prove it years. I think after this year, we're going to know a lot more about these guys than we know going into it. Now, they're the unanimous number 4, just because of their team. Their defense has a lot of holes. They have some good players like Gerald McCoy, but they just don't have a good enough supporting cast to help a guy like that.
They traded for JPP.
I think he's going to make a difference, but is it enough?
They got to work on that secondary too. They need a lot of help back there.
Vernon Hargraves is a good corner. He's improving, and Brent Grimes has been good. He's been consistent, but it's just.
But Father Time is undefeated. Brent Grimes getting older, especially at cornerback. You see a steep drop off after 30. There's not many guys that can be dominant at corner. Brent Grimes is getting there. And I agree with JPP. I like the pickup. I don't think he's necessarily going to be the guy he was, but if he can get you some sacks, maybe you get back on the right track. I just don't see this team and that defense really competing with anyone else in the division, right? And I think that's why we had him as a unanimous number 4. So let's talk about the number 3.
Well, let's just talk about all 3 of them at this point. This is the only division to send 3 teams into the playoffs last year.
Yeah, and I think by far they're the closest, even going into the season. You don't see any one of these teams just absolutely grenading, do you?
No, I think if any team does it, in my opinion, it's going to be the Panthers, but it's not going to be a significant difference. Instead of being 11-5, they might be 10-6. I literally almost think they could mirror their record next year.
They have that hard-nosed team, too, that they play good defense. They're committed to running the ball, and they just have towering receivers that are going to sit there and go up over you. It's like everyone's a power forward on that team.
I don't see them doing the same thing they did last year, because you got to think about how Cam Newton is up and down every season. He had an up season last year. He's gonna have a down season this year. He's not an elite quarterback. He's a superior athlete. He can go out there and truck people, but he's not consistent yearly.
I completely agree with you, but I think that defense and that run game, including him, is what's going to make the difference.
The defense is getting older.
Yeah, absolutely,
Look,
and they're hurt, and they get hurt, and they get suspended now, and But that's what you said. 2 years ago when they lost Josh Norman.
They're kind of like the Ravens, where everybody's gone, but somehow they're still good.
That's what I'm saying. 2 years ago when they lost Josh Norman, or 3 years ago now, they said, there's no one in their secondary. What are they going to do? Well, they go out and they draft 3 corners in the draft. And you know what? They made it happen, and it seemed to work. So...
And it all comes down to the pass rush. Like I said, they've been good at getting after the quarterback, so that can hide some deficiency in the back end. I think I think they're going to be right around that 9 to 10 win window, and I think just about everyone in this division will be. Even the Saints. I mean, I think the Saints might take a marginal step back simply because I don't think their defense is all that. They had some guys step up. Like Lattimore looks like he's going to be a great corner going forward. But I just don't know if through and through they're as good as everyone wants to make them out to be defensively.
I think the Saints are going to be better this year only because they have another year in the system. You got Alvin Kamara coming into his own.
Good old UT boy, Alvin Kamara. Thanks, Butch, for not using him in college.
I think you're absolutely right. I think their run game is just phenomenal with the 1-2 punch. Let's just say if they do anything this draft they did last year's draft, I see this team winning up to 14 games. Now, of course, that's a giant reach. Not every time do you draft 3 starters with your first 3 picks and actually do really well. That just doesn't happen year in and year out. I do see them winning the division. I think it's going to be between them and Atlanta. I think the Panthers could squeak in, it depending on how the Saints and Falcons do their rivalry games to each other. If they go 1-1 and the Panthers can sneak a couple wins in there. Like I said before, I think there's a chance for either one of these 3 teams to win the division.
And just to keep you updated, we have the Saints winning the first spot and the Falcons coming in second. I think what holds Atlanta back is their scheme and their system. Steve Sarkisian, I've talked about him before in the past. I think he's one of the worst offensive coordinators possibly they could have picked. The guy has failed upward his entire career. He was the head coach at USC, dropped out because he had a drinking problem, which, I mean, okay, I get that. People have problems in their lives, but then he goes on, coaches for Alabama for like a short period of time.
One game.
Exactly. Very short period of time. Coaches there, they do okay in that game, but, I don't see that as warranting an offensive coordinator job for Atlanta. It's like they snatched him up thinking he was this great hire, and then you just look at the difference between him and Shanahan, it's night and day. Absolutely night and day. He turned Devontae Freeman from a superstar into just another guy. Matt Ryan looked like he was Tom Brady 2 years ago, and now he looks like he's Matt Ryan again. And, I think that's what's going to stop him next year. I think though they have enough talent on that roster that if they had a good offensive coordinator, they'd be running away with it. But with them having the offense that they've kind of run last year, I don't see them getting much better, and I think that's what's going to put the Saints over them.
I think their defense actually improved last year from the year before. The Falcons did. They was actually number 6 in the league last year, but the offense took such a step back that they got even worse.
Exactly, and usually you don't see that when you keep all your players. It's like they kept all their players, switched out their offensive coordinator, and the magic was gone.
Yeah, you definitely see Dan Quinn putting a good defense out there. I mean, he's kind of proved it. I mean, what defense did they have before Dan Quinn? None.
Absolutely none.
And he has literally, made it almost change the culture of the Falcons. Even though all their names are on their offensive side, their culture is turning to a defensive team. I still seeing it being a really tough division. Let's go ahead and move on to our last division of the evening, guys. We got the NFC West. Rams, number 1. 49ers, number 2. Seahawks, 3. And the Cardinals, 4. Man, what reaches out to you guys on this?
It's a little more clear-cut, but I think everyone's ready to crown the Rams like, NFC playoff contenders and Super Bowl contenders. The one thing I will caution you is, remember, Philadelphia had a super team 5 or 6 years ago, and they won 6 games. So I think a lot of times you can have these teams that when you look at them on paper, you're like, they should just destroy everybody, but they go in there with that mentality that, we got this, and they wind up underachieving. And I think that the Rams, to me, that's what I can smell in the future. It just seems like something that is set up that it might disappoint.
It's because what makes the Rams different is because they have better coaching than the Eagles had a couple years ago. They have Wade Phillips coaching the defense. That's a great coach to coach that defense. Then you have Sean McVay coaching the offense, and he can mix it up, call any play he wants, and to get the ball down the field.
I'm going to refute that a little bit because if you remember back then, Chip Kelly, we were all sitting there saying, this guy's, he's got the secret, right? He's got the secret formula that beats everybody.
I don't think everyone said that.
That's after his first year they did when he won 12 games, and then the roster got better.
With Chip Kelly, he just wanted to speed up the offense, and the defense was all worn out when they got on the field. That's why.
Very true, but it was the same kind of thing with McVay, where everyone's like, this guy, he's the whiz kid. Nobody can figure him out. And then you know what? Defensive coordinators got some time to sit there and figure him out, and they did. I wonder if McVay might take a similar route. I mean, I still like this team. I still voted him number one. But, I think it may not – everyone's ready to crown him. I'm just sitting there saying, let's pump the brakes a little bit. Let's see what actually happens first.
Look at the players they got. They got Todd Gurley. They got Whitworth out there, offensive line. They got Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks is a great pickup for them. And who's the other wide receiver? Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp is a good wide receiver.
Cooper Kupp. They have Robert Woods.
Yeah, Robert Woods,
good receiver. Came out of nowhere. Like – people were talking about his career being over in Buffalo, and then he goes to the Rams, and all of a sudden it's like it's night and day. It's a new guy.
He went to the Rams to be their fourth or fifth receiver and just proved himself. So,
yeah, I mean, I think it was one of those things that they picked up Sammy Watkins thinking he was going to be the guy, and then all of a sudden you have Robert Woods just tearing it up, and you're like, how do we not play this guy? How do we not keep throwing it his direction?
I think the biggest question mark in this division is the Seahawks. I mean, they're losing important people. Keeping some of them, but I mean, when does that defense no longer be the Legion of Doom?
This year?
I mean, is Richard Sherman that big of a loss? I believe so. I mean, besides last year, he's pretty much the only one that stayed healthy on the field the whole entire time.
Well, he tore his ACL. Well, you're right. Besides last year. Correct. The one thing I will say is you have Cam Chancellor coming off a severe neck injury. He's talking about hanging it up. At this point, all you have left of the Legion of Boom is Earl Thomas.
But he's proven he can't stay healthy.
And he's been banged up.
He's not even going to voluntary OTAs.
Yeah, I mean,
he's missing those, and he's talking about in the regular season when they played the Cowboys, he's talking about he want to go play for the Cowboys. So
the window is closing. The window is definitely closing defense, for them quick.
And it's definitely proven that Russell Wilson can't carry the team by himself.
They have no offensive line
he's running for his life.
I don't even pin it on him. I think the reason they were even in the conversation this year is because Russell Wilson is as good as he is.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He can't do it by himself. I think the reason they were 9-7 was because of Russell Wilson.
Totally agree.
I'm just saying he can't do it by himself. So where do you find the people to help him succeed again?
They have a project on their hands. Let me tell you, they have a lot of guys leaving, a lot of guys getting older. To me, it really seems like the window is closing, and can they keep it open for another year or two? I think there's a possibility of it. We voted them third in this scenario because we have the 49ers beating them at number 2. But I could see a scenario where they get fourth, where the team, it just
is this close to being Pete Carroll's last year as the Seahawks head coach?
I wouldn't bet on it. I think he's had enough success that even if they go through a bad patch, that the owner would be looking at it like, oh, well, we'll get better with Pete. But, he probably didn't have more than a couple chances.
That's what I would think so.
They got to rebuild through the draft because they're up against the cap because how they pay Russell Wilson. They don't have, very much cap room left.
Well, I think that's what they're doing when they're depleting their secondary and their defense. Yeah. I mean, they're definitely creating cap. Well, let's talk about the Cardinals, man. No one has any faith in Sam Bradford. I mean, he's got Larry Fitzgerald out there. He's got David Johnson. I mean,
nobody has any faith with Sam Bradford, but neither do we. We voted him fourth, right? Wasn't it unanimous fourth too?
It was.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sam Bradford's an okay quarterback. I think he had success in the Vikings, but you look at a team like the Vikings, and Case Keenum came in there and looked like an all-star. So when you look at that, I almost want to discount it. I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I think he's just an unhealthy quarterback, and I think he's going to wind up getting hurt again. And we're going to be looking at a similar scenario as last year where you've got Drew Stanton playing or Blaine Gabbert playing or all these guys that you don't want out there that are going to be out there for a lot of time.
You just got Sam Bradford. He's just by himself out there. He just does. He's going to get injured again. He's going to get injured.
No, their offensive line's definitely an issue. There's no doubt.
He's just terrible. He's the most overrated quarterback I ever seen.
I don't know if I'd say that, man.
I wouldn't go overrated
because he gets so much. He gets paid so much money.
I'll give you overpaid. I don't know about overrated. Like if money was no object and you had to put a team together and you had Sam Bradford, I think you could win a game. If it was down to one game. But the thing I will say is, the guy has definitely succeeded and kept getting paid. when he really hasn't performed as much
Never
as...
been to playoffs.
Well, he played with Jeff Fisher a lot. That doesn't help. It definitely doesn't help. I think the Cardinals did what they had to do signing him, right?
No, I agree. I mean, he was probably the only one that probably wanted to go down there and play.
And they gave him a 1-year deal. It was worth $20 million, but if you have the money, you might as well give it to him, right? That's what you're paying for a great quarterback anyway. So I don't fault the Cardinals for saying, let's wait and see, when we're a team that's probably not where it needs to be to really challenge for the Super Bowl anyway. Yeah. So if you see... Bradford stays healthy and everything, maybe you talk about a longer-term deal. If not, then hey, next year we need to go get us a guy.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I like their defense. Their defense is pretty good. They got Patrick Peterson back there. That's about it.
To me, it really... They lost Tyrann Mathieu. The Honey Badger moved on to Houston. I think that's going to hurt him.
Absolutely.
And I think Patrick Peterson's getting to that point in his career where you're getting the last couple good years of football out of him. And it's just a shame that I think the rest of the team isn't going to be as good. You'd like to see him, crescendoing into the Super Bowl at this point in his career. But really, you know... You
got playmakers and you got veteran presence. You got a playmaker in Jones and Petersons. And you got veteran in I think Carlos Dansby's still there for another year, isn't he? Yeah. And Carlos Dansby now is not the Carlos Dansby of the past, but whoever they bring in, he's gonna be able to show them how to play the game. Coach them in the right direction. Their defense is gonna be iffy, but I think it's all about their offense. Their offensive line. Can David Johnson stay healthy? A wrist injury took him out the whole entire year last year.
True, but it's not often you see a dislocated wrist. That's a pretty severe injury.
No, I'm not knocking him.
They say the first time it happens, you're much more likely to do it again.
Yeah, and I'm not knocking him. That's my thing is, can he stay healthy? Let's go ahead and move to the 49ers, guys. Man,
the Wonder Team.
I am all about Jimmy G, and I can't stand the fact that the Patriots drafted him, but I'll get over that fact because now he's playing for the 49ers. Man, this guy is a stud. I love how he makes Goodwin look like a good receiver. I'm excited to see him. Shanahan's offense is going to open it up with him. He's got a whole offseason with him. I'm excited to watch this team play.
I just want to see what Richard Sherman has left. That's what I want to see. That's the main thing, because he signed an incentive field contract.
Very, very incentive filled.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and people were dogging him for negotiating his own contract. Well, you could have done better if you would have paid a guy to do it, right?
He's betting on himself. Can you blame the guy? He's like, let me go out there and prove it. You guys gave up on me. I'm going to go prove you shouldn't have.
And I think that kind of anger and that kind of revenge, it can extend your career. It's like that motivation, that extra little, poke in the side that you're like, I need to get out there and show it every day that, hey, this is what you're missing. This is what you gave up on. I think that can help extend a career as opposed to guys like Werner, not Werner, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. The Jets corner from forever ago. Darrelle Revis. Yes. As opposed to Revis, where I think he's like, hey, I'm 30. I'm getting paid a lot of money. Maybe there's more space on Revis Island than we wanted to talk about before.
Yeah, I'm excited about the team, and I think you're literally talking about in the draft grabbing any kind of defensive playmaker back there. I think the whole team's based on that offense, and you can put defensive players in there that can make plays, turn the ball over. I think you're talking about a great team.
They got the 8th pick, so they got to see who they're going to pick. They got some lot of defensive players in the draft. You got Denzel Ward out there. You got Mika Fitzpatrick on defense. You can pick up them players. Put him with Richard Sherman.
Well,
make something happen.
With Reuben Foster looking like he's going to do some hard time here, I think they might go middle linebacker.
Yeah, I think
Roquan Smith from Georgia.
Yeah,
I think that's definitely a possibility.
We're thinking Roquan Smith. I've heard a lot of teams like him because he's a good leader.
Yeah.
I could also see him taking a receiver. I know it's a little high for the guys where they're projected, but they might be like, middle linebackers come and go, but Jimmy G needs someone to throw to.
He needs someone to learn, to combine with. Chemistry. Yeah, exactly. You talk about a good quarterback, literally besides Tom Brady. You talk about a good wide receiver that's with them the whole entire time. You talk about Joe Montana, Jerry Rice. You talk about Troy Aikman. You talk about Michael Irving. There's always a good wide receiver behind a good quarterback.
Manning and Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne.
Exactly.
And I think there's a little bit of that, each guy helps build the other guy's legend. But I think if I'm John Lynch, I might be like, Pierre Garçon's 32 and coming back from a fractured skull. And then we have Marquise Goodwin, who's a track star, but beyond that, probably not that good of a receiver. And then I have, Kittle is my tight end. I'm looking at it like, we need playmakers. Maybe I just reach on a receiver and take one early.
I don't think they should take one early in the draft at number 8. because all you have is Calvin Ridley. That's the top rated receiver, and he's not rated that high. You gotta wait till the second, third round.
Who's saying they're not taking a running back? They need a running back too.
They can't take a running back.
Well, not after you paid McKinnon, right? I mean, maybe they think McKinnon's the guy. He's the second or third highest paid running back in the NFL. Jerick McKinnon is the second or third highest paid running back in the NFL.
You don't give a guy a cut. Hold on, can you say that one more time?
Jerick McKinnon is the second or third highest rated running back, or highest paid running back in the NFL. You don't pay a guy that kind of money to put him behind somebody, right?
You can go out to somebody and draft in like the late rounds. They got Darius Geis out there. You got Penny from San Diego State.
I'm not saying it won't happen.
You can
I
go
agree.
out to late round running back. You don't have to go out to running back early.
I guess when I said I see him grabbing it, I guess I wasn't talking about the 8th pick. I don't see guys falling to the second round personally, but I mean,
now the one thing I will say about that is, regardless of their rating, I think teams will be looking at a lot of like the Cowboys and the Jaguars, how they added that stud running back, and they're like, all of a sudden those teams went from irrelevant to challenging. And I think that teams are going to look at that and be like, well, we just got to get our running back. So you're going to see a lot of these running backs come off the board. And this is a pretty deep draft, supposedly, for running backs.
You got Sony Michel out there, and then Nick Chubb. That's some late round running backs right there. And they could be real good out there.
I agree with you.
Go out there.
Absolutely. I mean, they might even trade back on that just to grab a couple extra picks because the draft is so deep. They are literally just looking for playmakers.
They don't need to trade, but they need to get defensive players right there.
I tell you, if someone offers them something that's just too expensive not to give it up, worth it, they're going to do it. I can't see them not doing it. I'm not saying there's not needs for them, but I just think that they don't have to reach so high at the 8th pick. They could pick people in the later round and get other playmakers in that spot.
And let me just admit, I was wrong about John Lynch. I thought when they signed him, I was like, this is a disaster signing, because I thought it was going to be one of those things where they bring a guy in that has no front office experience and he just runs the team into the ground, kind of like Sashi Brown from the actual Browns. But he's done a great job so far. Trading for Jimmy G. He's had some other good picks. I like the Reuben Foster pick, even though he got in trouble with the law. That's not something Lynch can control. But I sit there and look at all the moves he's made, and I'm like, well, that's actually a lot better than I thought it would be. So I think that's why we have them at number 2. I think Jimmy G is the biggest part of that, and you got to remember, Jimmy G's been injured a little bit too. When he played for the Patriots that year, Tom Brady was serving his suspension. He only played a game or two before he got hurt. So I think now that we're moving outside of a 6-game kind of audition for him, is health, a factor for him?
The injury wasn't anything significant. I don't remember exactly what it was. He could have actually came back and played.
I think it was something with a finger, if I remember.
It was his knee.
Was it his knee?
But it wasn't significant. It wasn't something that was.
It kept him out. It kept him out 3 games.
Yeah.
3 games.
It was enough for Brady to come back when they had to finish with Brissett.
Wow.
And really, that helped make Brissett's career. So I guess, it's funny how the NFL moves. But I think, as long as Garoppolo can stay healthy, they're going to challenge the Rams, I think.
Yeah. I agree. Well, that wraps up our division rankings. I don't know what you guys feel like with them. I think they went pretty well.
Yeah, I think we did. I'll be surprised because there's always going into a season, you're like, oh, we got this. We all know what's going to happen. And then Cleveland will win 12 games somehow. Well, maybe not Cleveland. But one of these surprise teams that maybe Tampa, maybe, the Colts. There's always somebody that you're like, wow, we had no idea that they're going to make the playoffs, that you had no idea. So, it'll be interesting to keep track of this and see where we finish out. But, for Sports Around the Bar, I'm Jake Reaper, your bartender again.
I'm Drew.
I'm Wayne.
And, we'll catch you guys later. Make sure you like our page on Facebook and follow us on Game Time Network. We're going to try to pump a show out here every week, and we look forward to hanging out with you guys again.
Hey, for last call, go ahead and comment. Tell us what you think. Tell us we're way off. We want to hear what you guys have to say. This is all about the fans. You tell me we're wrong. Well, hey, we're wrong, and we'll move on.
You tell us we're wrong, and then I'll tell you why, no, actually, you're wrong. But with that, guys, thanks for hanging out with us, and we can't wait to see you again.
Cheers.
Go Pats.
Cheers. Maybe not. Cheers.